Thank you for watching this video. We would like to start off with a quick thank you to our annual sponsors. Our gold level sponsors, Geronimo Properties, Northmark, AEI Consultants, and EBI Consulting. Our silver level sponsors, St. James Real Estate Advisors and May Property Management. We would also like to mention our charitable partner for 2022, New View Communities, a CDC organization promoting affordable housing in central Massachusetts. To find out how you can become a sponsor of the New England CCIM chapter or to learn more about New View Communities, please feel free to visit our websites. There will be links in the description below. Greetings on behalf of the New England CCIM chapter. I'm Michael Chase, chapter president for 2022. Today is the 11th video for our 2022 CRE Expert Series. We're very pleased to be joined by Justin Lamontagne and Sam LeGeyt of the Dunham Group. Justin, Sam, thank you both for taking the time to speak with us today. Why don't we start off with a quick introduction? Justin, you've been with us before, but would you mind refreshing our audience about your background?
Sure. Thanks, Michael. Happy to be back. Yeah, we talked in January, and I'm happy to discuss the sort of the update to the Maine market. Again, my name is Justin Lamontagne. I'm a broker at the designated broker and partner at the Dunham Group. We are a boutique commercial real estate firm specializing in industrial and office. We do some retail and certainly investment work as well. I've been brokering deals in Maine since 2006, been with the Dunham Group since 2011, and really enjoy it. Just don't take it for granted. I think we've got one of the best jobs in the world. So, and Sam and I have worked closely together for the last 5 years or so. So I'll turn it over to Sam. Tell us about yourself.
Great. Thanks, Justin. Sam, it's your first time with us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself too?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for having me. My name is Sam LeGeyt. I'm a 8-year broker now at the last 4.5, 5 at the Dunham Group, but I'm an office and industrial broker, specifically covering the southern central markets of Maine, and happy to be here and also working towards my CCIM designation.
Excellent. Well, we're always glad to hear that. So Justin, reason why we have you both on here today is because Dunham Group recently published a mid-year market report on the office and industrial markets in Greater Portland. So the report starts off with an industrial update. So let's start off with you. What are some
Sure.
key takeaways for the industrial in Greater Portland?
Sure. Thanks, Mike. It's been an interesting 6 months. So last we talked, it was after the annual report that I put together on the industrial sector. We call it the Greater Portland Industrial Market Survey. It's a survey that I've been maintaining and updating for 12 years now, and we're tracking vacancies and lease rates and sale prices, and it's just been a great barometer of the health of the market. And as we all know, the industrial sector has just been skyrocketing for the last decade. So it's great to have that accelerated market improvement quantified. We've got real data to back that up now. So in January, I described a very, very tight competitive industrial market like we're seeing all over the region and country. A number of factors lead into that, but in July, Sam and I, for the third year in a row, we decided to do a mid-year update. So we dust off the statistics, kind of look back at the last 6 months, kind of keep an eye on trends, anecdotes, take a second look at the data as it updated to July 1st. Sam does the same thing for the office market, which he'll share some statistics. The summer, it was interesting to look back at our statistics because we're starting to see some glimmers of change in the industrial sector. The vacancy rate went from 1.7%, which is historically tight and just a very, very small number. That was in January. And it's risen to 2.25. So, it's up slightly, maybe 50 to 75 basis points, but up nonetheless. So that means that there is some additional inventory out there. And a few factors I think are attributing to that. First and foremost, we have added inventory. We're starting to see new construction. We have for the last 2 or 3 years. We've added, depending on who you talk to, between 750,000 and 1 million square feet over the last few years. Virtually all of that has been absorbed. Most of it was led by end users or owner user businesses that are building for themselves. But some were built on spec, and those also have been very successful. There was a 140,000 square foot industrial building that was built on spec at the end of last year, and during construction, they were able to fully lease that. So the added inventory has been fantastic, but again, mostly fully absorbed. But there are some speculative projects that, while successful and I think will fill, do have some vacancies. So again, we're up to about 2.25% in the greater Portland area. The other interesting trend that we're starting to see that is loosening up some inventory is the cannabis craze. Cannabis was a major driver in the industrial sector in really all of Maine for the last decade. They absorbed a lot of square footage, were willing to pay premium pricing. Landlords got comfortable initially. They were a little concerned that we weren't sure how to deal with this business. And again, this is the cultivation of cannabis, the growing facilities, not the retail stores that I'm talking about. So it was a very impactful and a very successful industry. It's starting to wane. I think it's oversaturated. They overshot somewhat, and there are some major national players that have come into our market that are kind of putting the squeeze on the smaller guys, the ones that were here originally, the more local folks. So we're starting to see 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 square foot cannabis units become available. We're starting to see cannabis businesses for sale, which is interesting. So that skyrocketing wave, I think, is starting to slow down. And just anecdotally, when we get new listings now, in the past, if I had a 5,000 or 10,000 square foot industrial space come available, the first 10 phone calls I would get would be cannabis related, and we needed to be ready to answer those questions. Sometimes the spaces weren't appropriate for cannabis, so we would go as far as to put on our marketing materials, not cannabis friendly. Don't call me, in other words. So, but today those calls are slowing down significantly. We're just not getting as many inquiries as we used to. So the business is not dead, the industry is not dead, but there is definitely some signs that it's going to start slowing down, which frankly is a good thing. 2.25% vacancy, which is about where we've been for the last 5 years. We've been in a 2 to 3% vacancy environment for 5 years. It's just not a healthy market. It's not a tenant. It's not healthy for tenants, certainly. It's great to be a landlord or a property owner, but if you're a small to medium-sized business owner, you've got problems. You can't find space to grow. You can't, which inhibits your ability to hire new people and to make new stuff, whatever it is that you do. It's been a very challenging and inhibiting industrial market for too long. So I'm a little hopeful on behalf of my tenant clients, particularly, that we're going to start seeing some easing of the supply and demand imbalance. And again, the first 6 months of this year have reflected signs that might be coming.
Sam, let's shift over to your side of things in the office. What can you tell us about the Portland office market and what you're seeing there?
Yeah, so in the greater Portland office market, we've got about 26 million square feet. We're seeing vacancy rates. I tell it as a little bit of a tale of two cities as of lately, because downtown, we've got a generally pretty healthy market. The Class A product downtown, vacancies just below our 10-year average, somewhere around 5%, a little over 5%. Class B buildings lag a little bit downtown, but then when you get out to the suburbs, we've got a lot of empty spaces, certainly on the larger side of things, where, we've got 8 to 10, maybe even a dozen options for tenants over 50,000 square feet. If you look downtown at the same time, you maybe have one option for tenants over 50,000 square feet. So kind of an interesting progress there. We do have a lot of space, however, that's not being used in the suburban market that is not technically vacant. It's shadow space. They're running out the end of a lease that's likely not to be renewed. Bigger companies that have started making post-COVID decisions and are either taking less space, moving out of the market totally, or otherwise. So interesting trend there. We're also seeing a flight to quality. We've had a couple of new buildings in the last couple of years built downtown. This is actually the Portland Peninsula behind me here. We've had a couple of new buildings built over here, particularly Sun Life is right on the waterfront down there, and Covetrus, which is a life science company local to Maine, they signed a long-term lease for a large space down there. They're ultimately not going to take the office space of that lease. They have some pharmaceutical space in there that they've already occupied, but a larger engineering tenant from the suburbs is going to take that office space. So we're seeing that flight to quality. It's going to leave some holes, some bigger holes in the suburban market, and still a little bit of an uncertainty about the suburbs and the softening that's going on there. So, like I said, we have yet to see it really hit the vacancy numbers because it's lagging a little bit based on lease renewal timelines. But we certainly expect to see that. And, because of that in the suburbs, landlords are having to fight for deals. We've seen, tenant concessions go much higher, certainly in terms of free rent or dollars per square foot, obviously based on construction pricing being higher than it has been seemingly ever. But this is a market where the average rent is about $20 a square foot generally across the market. And, we're seeing large concessions on 10-year deals anywhere from $30 to $50 a square foot. Obviously, like I said, doesn't get you what it used to, but that's how landlords are getting deals, certainly right now in the suburban market. And on the sales side, generally low inventory, I think across the board. Owner users have been driving this market for a couple of years now with the uncertainty with tenants. When we were in COVID, tenants were looking at their renewals and saying, okay, can we push this out, maybe just to do a year renewal and see what this looks like on the other side of it. And so certainly that slowed the investment deals with those shorter term tenancies, but also we have a healthy number of owner users, and rising interest rates and construction costs are starting to affect pricing, but it's still seemingly aggressive from a selling standpoint. We're seeing deals regularly priced on average between $120 and $150 a square foot, and sometimes well above that. The cap rates have gone up recently. I would say the past 10 years, we're anywhere between 7 and 7.5. I think we're closer to 8 at this point. And we're also seeing owners and investors, developers looking at, reuse and redevelopment of office buildings. Anything from residential housing to self-storage to quasi-lab industrial space, if they can make the ceiling heights and other amenities work. So from a forecasting standpoint, we're seeing all the options that tenants have always had: trading, leasing for ownership, taking less space, taking more space, or leaving the market altogether. It's an interesting time where I think we're seeing all 4 of those, maybe more so than ever before, but interesting nonetheless. And we expect construction costs to come down. I think ultimately for our market, we need them to. It's going to facilitate more business, more deals, and allow tenants that need space to take more space if that's the case. But we are dealing with an increase in occupancy costs, not unlike I think the rest of the world at this point, certainly the rest of the Northeast. Energy costs are continuing to rise. We here in Portland, Maine, have had a bit of a parking issue over the last six or 8 years. COVID kind of sent that problem packing, but it seems to be back. We've got wait lists for parking garages and parking lots yet again in the downtown market, and certainly that's weighing occupants' decisions as those costs kind of rise up. So a bit of a mixed bag in the office market, certainly.
Interesting. Thank you, Sam, for sharing all that. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of great information.
Yeah.
Justin, let's come back to you for a second. You mentioned the trend in your report about cannabis. One of the other trends I thought was interesting in your report was land for speculative development, but the need for it to be, pad ready. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's a new product, at least to Maine, and it's a new model that was really championed by a particular developer and group at the Scarborough Downs site. They parceled off 100 acres or 200 acres. I don't know the exact number. They're probably closer to 100, specific for light industrial, and they called it the Innovation District. The rest of the development is almost exclusively residential based. They were building a ton of apartments and condos, and those are going like crazy, as you'd imagine. But the Innovation District was really a new product whereby they cleared the land, they stubbed in the utilities, they put in all the infrastructure, they went as far as getting DEP approvals for all the different lots. So they did all the hard, slow, expensive legwork that it takes to develop raw land. So when they went to market, they were basically pitching pad ready parcels of land, shovel ready within 4 to 6 months. All you needed to do was design your building, go to planning board, and get it approved. So they were literally in the ground, people that bought land a good year before they would be anywhere else. And as a result, they were able to charge a premium. So most raw land, industrial zone land in the southern Maine area ranges in price from 100 to 150,000 per acre. These guys got $300,000 per acre, so literally double the amount of what value in the land, and they sold out in 18 months. So it was just a remarkable success story, and one that I think is going to be replicated. I know that's being replicated, or at least attempted to be replicated. If you control large swaths of land that is industrially zoned, you've seen this model. It works. Spend the money on speculation, clear it, do the work, engineer it, get the roads in, make it easy. I mentioned that 140,000 square foot speculative building earlier. The only reason they won that tenant, it was a Frito-Lay that took the entire building, was timing. Frito-Lay was looking pretty seriously at another site that just didn't have as much speculative legwork complete as this other project. So time is becoming a really, really important factor for folks when it comes to new construction. And again, I think developers have figured that out. So those that own raw land, should study this model and consider it. It's still risky, of course. We're still a pretty small market, but at least in the case of the Innovation District, it just was an absolute grand slam success story.
And you mentioned they were able to, did you say double the typical sales price per acre?
Yeah, at least. Again, it's land costs are 100, 125,000, maybe 150,000 per acre for a really good site. And these folks all got 300, and there may be more money to be had there. They sold out so quickly that I think that I don't want to say price didn't matter, but time and ease of development. Maine is not necessarily an easy place to develop. We've got some NIMBY problems, and we've got heavily involved municipalities, and there's a lot of checks and balances. So it's not easy to build a building in Maine. So these developers made it easy, and I think that was really smart.
Great. You mentioned at the very beginning of our conversation, the vacancy rate had ticked up a little bit. How's transaction volume? Where are you seeing rents and cap rates in the industrial side?
Yeah, pricing, as you'd imagine, is increased dramatically over the years. We've been tracking lease rates and average sale prices since 2011, but for a blip here or there, every year it's gone up. Sales prices are now hovering in the $90 to $100 per square foot range for an existing building, with plenty of examples well over that for really premium buildings. And that is literally double what we were selling these same buildings for just 10 years ago. So sales prices have gone up dramatically. Lease prices, particularly in the last, I'd say 2 to 3 years, have increased dramatically as well. For a long time, they were kind of ticking up, just 25 cents, 30 cents a year. And I think that had to do with landlords' hesitation to jack rents on tenants. They were getting $4.50, $5 a foot for 30 years. And now they were able to get 6, 7, 8, 9. Our average lease prices are closer to $9 per square foot. I just leased a building earlier this year, a very simple 6,000 foot building, had an overhead doors, a little bit of office space. And I don't want to say I made up the asking price, but I kind of did. Like, there was no comp that suggested this building might be worth $12 a foot, triple net. But I threw it on there, and we ended up leasing it for $12.80 per square foot. We had multiple offers, and it drove the price up. That's just a stunning, experience, and it really gets to how, if you've got a decent building in a good location, we're setting the market on every transaction. I'm sorry. Are you still seeing rent increases? We are. Yep, we are. And will it plateau now that we're starting to see some signs of vacancies settling or maybe even increasing? Perhaps. But I think lease prices will lag behind vacancies. So we're going to just continue to study things. And if I'm a landlord or broker on an industrial building, there's just no reason to not continue to push the market, and just listen to the market. If you get some pushback, or if it sits for a while, pricing might be the reason. But we're in a position, property owners have that luxury now, where you can push the market and see where it goes. And you could be much more selective of the uses too. That's another problem that cannabis is having. Cannabis is has a high impact use. So landlords have the luxury of picking and choosing lower impact, lesser impact uses, warehousing, just simple, storage of goods. You can get quite a bit of money now for that use as a landlord. So it's certainly still a landlord's market in spite of the glimmers of hope that I mentioned earlier.
Great. Okay. And then Sam, you talked about in the office market, adaptive reuse. What are some of the reuses that people are looking at in the downtown area?
In downtown, it's mostly residential. We do have a housing issue, a housing affordability issue, certainly when you're talking about downtown Portland. And we've seen a couple examples recently, the former telephone building that's being renovated, telephone office building that's being renovated into almost 90 units, I believe, residential units. And then the building right next to that was also an office building, is a part of that property as well. So almost exclusively reuse as residential when we're talking about the downtown market.
Interesting. Now, it was recently that downtown Portland had rent stabilization, correct? Has that not impacted the adaptive reuse market?
I think it certainly has. I think those projects that are in place now were permitted prior to that. So we're seeing those kind of come to finalization, being put on the market, and they're not necessarily being affected by that. That certainly, I think, has had developers pull back on looking at other opportunities. But there's also some bigger players, looking at projects, Maine State Housing, Community Housing of Maine, non-governmental organizations like that that are still able to make projects work.
And I think you mentioned suburban office rents in the 20s. How does that compare to downtown?
That's an average really just across the board. In the suburban market, we're looking at $13 to $15 a square foot triple net. And that's really a class A, B style building. When you're talking about the downtown market, you're 22 to 27, depending on quality as far as triple net goes. Again, in the class A to B, and sometimes even, you could be into the low 30s for some of this newer product that was built in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I'll make a quick comment on the office market. I've done a couple significant recent suburban deals, and it's interesting that, and Sam was talking about concessions. Landlords in those 2 deals, the landlords both were concerned and hesitant to do a dramatically reduced lease rate. They really want to see that number that they were getting or close to it previously, but they were open to slower escalators and significant free rent. So I think their lenders and maybe their investors want to see that $13, $14 a foot number that they were for in years past. But at the same time, they have to recognize that COVID has completely changed the landscape. So my tenant clients had a lot of leverage. So we use that leverage to get a lot of free rent. And you do the math over the course of the lease, that free rent actually makes the effective lease rate per square foot, $2 or $3 a square foot less than what they were asking. So it's a great deal for the tenant, but it still looks pretty good on paper for the owner and his investors, and I think that their lenders. And TI money, Sam's right, was there, but boy, it does not get you very far anymore. I can't believe what it costs just for painting carpet nowadays. So the other thing that we really tried to focus on in my office searches were not just finding the right size, but layouts that were generally in line with what would work for them. If you find an office tenant that needs a gut job right now, I mean, it's $100 a foot project without blinking an eye. If you need electric and you need new lights and ceiling grids and you're moving walls, I mean, that used to be medical fit up. Medical fit up is probably $200 a foot now. So we're really working hard on trying to work with existing layouts just for the ease of not only the schedule, but absolutely the budget. It just doesn't work for anybody. The tenant can't pay for it. The owner can't pay for it. So in both of my office cases, luckily we found spaces that the businesses could work with close to as is with just paint and carpet.
What are some things that you're advising your clients or thinking about advising your clients from here to the rest of the year? Justin, why don't I ask that to you first?
I think, it's interesting. I've got 3 pretty large users in the market right now that I'm representing, each of whom need 50 to 200,000 square feet. And unfortunately, it just doesn't exist. And so I'm trying to coach my clients, and I have been, to be patient, to be flexible, to be maybe more flexible in terms of the general requirements geographically. Maybe we need to go outside of Greater Portland to find something existing. And when I say be patient and be flexible, yes, but also be extremely aggressive. When we do find the right opportunity, you don't mess around. You got to jump on it. So in the industrial market, like I said, it still is a landlord's market. So I'm coaching my tenant clients and buyers clients that, we've got cards to play, but we got to be careful. We don't want to blow an opportunity. So, and I don't anticipate that changing anytime soon.
Great. Sam, how about you?
Yeah, in the office market, I'm coaching my tenant clients certainly to engage earlier in the process. Construction is taking longer now. Tenants do have leverage, obviously, in the suburban market, but even in the downtown market, with this little bit of fear of the unknown of kind of what's coming next in the office market that I think's kind of generally out there. So certainly engaging sooner, and then even from a landlord perspective, let's figure this out and make a plan so that we know what we're doing when this does come up, as opposed to the 60 or 90 days that you're getting when the tenant gives you notice one way or the other.
Great. Well, Justin, you are a CCIM designee. Sam, you're a candidate on your way. Is there anything the New England CCIM chapter can be doing to support firms and professionals such as you?
I think doing things like this is great, Michael. And we've talked in the past. CCM's kind of built its reputation on education, and I think the classes are second to none. I encourage my brokers to take continuing education, just an hour or two here or there. But things like this, where you're actually educating us not only on sort of the nuts and bolts of how to do commercial real estate, but also other folks' markets. I've found these video is pretty interesting to hear about what's going on in Greater Boston or Rhode Island or Connecticut. And for those that are interested in what's happening in Maine, we really appreciate the opportunity to kind of shed some light on the latest. And again, this is real time stuff. This work that Sam and I put in was just last month. So I appreciate you putting these things together. I think that's a huge value that CCIM is offering.
Yeah, I'd piggyback on that as well. The sharing of data in this day and age has never been more important in this business, certainly. So the continuation of that in areas like this, I think, is excellent. And then getting back to networking in person, I think we have that great opportunity, and we need to take advantage of it. It's something I certainly miss, and it's great to get out there and see people again.
Great. Well, we appreciate the both of you and the real-time data and feedback that you give to us so that we can share that with the rest of our members. So Justin, Sam, thank you both for taking the time to chat with us today. And thank you for taking the time to watch this video. You can follow Justin and Sam on LinkedIn and through the Dunham Group website. Links will be included in the description below, as well as a link to their recent mid-year report that we referenced during this conversation. We have more great speakers and content coming soon, so please like and subscribe below and keep an eye on the channel. You can also feel free to follow the New England CCIM chapter on LinkedIn and other social media platforms. So thank you for viewing.